This is what we can expect from the. This is what is our greatest fortune, that we have somehow or other decided that in human life we got somehow or other association of devotees, and by no way, by no external force or anything like that, we should give that up. We should always think it as a precious gift, no matter what. We may not be perfect. We may be having lust, anger, greed, illusion, or all six anarthas at one time together with the highest level. Doesn't matter. Akama sarva kama va moksha kama udar vihi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham prati. Akama sarva. We have full of material desire with no material desire, but just render devotional service. And best way to render devotional service is, it begins etavan ihalokesme punsa dharma paransudha bhakti yogana bhagavati tan nama shravanadibhi. The devotional service begins with tan nama shravanadibhi, by hearing the holy name of Krishna. Isn't that wonderful? So it's not hard. It's not hard and fast. All we need to do is just begins our just by hearing the holy name of Krishna. So when we get it easily, we may lose its value. We may sometimes we have association and we take it so cheaply. And I look at here, I look around, there's nobody here. Everything is online. So the thing is, we imagine we take association cheaply in our life. So more we take it cheaply, the more we lose the opportunity to associate. There are so many wonderful singers were there. There's so many singers, but we we were not really taking shelter. We were not really absorbed in their when they were singing. So the thing is, we every minute which we get in association, Prabhus and Matajis, I'm telling you, take it as a charnamrut you received, as the greatest blessings you have received in this world. Don't take it anything less than a blessing. Association is a blessing. It's not it's not even a privilege. It's a blessing you have received. It's not even a privilege. It's a blessing. So when we consider association is a blessing, we will run, just like our sages and Naimisharanya. They were willing to be sinful. They were willing to leave away their yagyas and run in association because they knew it's a blessing. It's a blessing. When we take Charnamrut, it's a blessing. So it's so precious. It's so wonderful. And Srila Prabhupada has just given us the process in which we can follow. And what is stopping us right now from the process of following these principles? What is the two things stopping us right now? Can anyone tell me this? Two things are actually coming in a way of devotee. All of you are devotees here. Nobody's outsider. There are two things are actually stopping our progress at this time. And you understand these two things, your life is going to change from today. Two things, just two things that is actually stopping devotee. For outsiders, Maya just takes care. They are just puppets, They just give some, sense gratification. They run and there you go. For devotees, Maya actually she can actually test us. She doesn't want to stop also, but she's testing us in two ways. Anybody knows? Two ways.
With disease.
Disease?
Disease, sickness, right?
Yeah. Yes, but to be precise, sickness brings what?
Death, old age.
Okay. What else? Yeah. Anyone else want to try? There is no wrong answer here. Okay. Let me tell you these two things. It's going to blow your mind. You heard this before, but I'm just telling for my own purification. First thing is procrastination. through, and second thing is a lethargy. We know that the goal of life is go back home, back to Godhead. We know that this goal is very clear, but the Maya is going to act through is procrastination. So not now. You have whole life. You are young. You're just young. Uh, Actually, I just wanted to repeat this. I learned this from my own father. When my father, he was when I was a little boy, he used to tell me, uh, I want to dedicate my life when I retire. And he used to, of course, chant and hear every day morning. And he's my first guru, of course. So at that time, and he used to read Bhagavatam to me when I was a little boy. But he really had a taste for hearing and chanting. And just 1 month before his retirement, he vomited blood and he collapsed on the ground, dead with the cancer, tongue cancer. And then I kind of looked for alternate ways, and then I found Hare Krishna uh, devotees, and I took shelter. I was suffering a lot mentally, and I said, I will not do one thing in my life, no matter what happens, whichever difficult situations I will go through, but I will not procrastinate. Of course, I tried my best. I will never procrastinate the chanting. I will never do anything that will just. I tried. Of course, I could have done better, but we took it like a chanting, hearing, giving Krishna to others. That's a life and soul from the beginning. Because if I would think that I would retire and after I become 65 or something, I will start preaching and everything else. It's Maya. It's Maya, Prabhus. It's Maya. Whenever you think that you can do it later, it's Maya. And you don't know whether you can make it later. You don't know whether what's going to happen to you. So therefore, we have to understand that when you try to get out of this world, the siren starts going on all direction, and you know that Maya is become more vigilant against you than your neighbor right now. She's eyes on you more than your colleagues at work. They are just puppets. They know that she has them for lifelong servants. There's no way they are going to leave her service. Via service, they will keep serving. Birth, old age, they're constantly they are in a cycle of birth and death, and they will just after million lifetimes they will break their face against the rock, but they will remain loyal servant of the Maya. She knows that. But as soon as you become devotees, then here she is. She's more awakened than you are right now. And she's putting all her resources, all her uh, uh, all her strength to make sure that this candidate, when he is going to be out of my clutches, I want to make sure that he's really fit to go back to where he's fit to go to Golok Vrindavan. He's fit to be with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dancing in Golok Vrindavan. And then Nityananda Prabhu. They are just waiting, but she's just making sure. So when she's making sure, she's going to, just like when the Kalia was dancing, it was an ugly scene. The poison was coming out. So sometime when you chant, when you take devotional service, there may be ugly scene of your mind interrupting, mind intercepting. The mind is telling ugly scene. There will be ugly scenes coming in, but don't worry about it. It's just a matter of time. You realize that Krishna is waiting at the other side. You have nothing to be fearful. You continue your devotional service, and then all those anarthas, all those when when Varahadev appeared, the more incarnation of the Lord. At that time, Hiranyaksha, the one of the demon, what he did was he created a psychological war. He created a war which was psychological. You know what is psychological warfare? he created a scene where there were thousands of soldiers. There were thousands of naked soldiers running with the spears, and they were putting urine and stool from the skies and putting arrows, sharp arrows, and running towards Varahadev. It was all psychological warfare was created. All psychological warfare against Varahadev. And the Varahadev just, Haribol, Varahadev just put Hare Krishna. Varahadev, Hare Krishna. Okay. Varahadev just actually displayed the Sudarshan and make the whole psychological warfare disappear. So there is a lot of psychological warfare. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Yes.
Prabhu. Brigupati Prabhu is here. Prabhuji.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I'm sorry. I'm Haribol.
Haribol, Jai, good to see you.
Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. One shakal patro bhakta pasan bhutanam pavanebhyo vaishnavya namo namaha. Hare Krishna. Sorry, I was just trying to address before you, so we can get ready. I'm like that, when before the main players come, there are like startups, like that. So I'm just like that little startup to make the main players actually come in and give us the transcendental knowledge. So we are really fortunate to have your association,
Feelings mutual.
Prabhu. And we'd love to hear from you. Hare
Yeah,
Krishna.
sure. So I'm available to 1:25. So I'll speak for maybe like half hour, 45 minutes and just take some questions. But pretty much at 1:25, I have to disappear. We had a little mix up with the time. I actually thought this was supposed to be 1:30 my time or 1:45 my time. And I actually, in the text message, I put that, but I guess you didn't see that. And what I didn't see was when Mother Cassandra sent me the link, it did say PM Central Time, and I didn't catch that. So anyway, these things happen. But did you guys already chant anything, or should I do a quick Jai Radha Madhava, or just go right into the talk, or what? I can do a quick Jai Radha Madhava, just to do everything
Yes.
properly. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopi Jana Ballabha Giri Bhagadhari, Gopi Jana Ballabha Giri Bhagadhari, Yasodanandana Bhajana Ranjana, Yasodanandana Bhajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Banachari, Yamuna Tira Banachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Stotha Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Viveditanda Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Stotha Shri Srimad Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai, Ananta Gauri Vaishnavinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Ki Jai, Navadip Mayapur Ki Jai, Ganga Jamuna Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Maharani Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Brihat Madanga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Garanga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we'll be speaking today from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, text 15. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, Bhagavad Gita chapter 15, text 15. Savashachaham redisani vishto mitak smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedaischa savar aham eva vejo vedanta krit vedavit eva chaham. Translation. So Krishna speaking, he says, I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of the Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Purport. The Supreme Lord is situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it is from him that all activities are initiated. The living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is witness to all his work. In other words, he gets reminded by the Supersoul. Therefore, he begins his work according to his past deeds. Required knowledge is supplied to him, and remembrance is given to him. And he forgets also about his past life. Thus, the Lord is not only all-pervading, he is also localized in every individual heart. He awards the different fruit of results. He is worshipable not only as the impersonal Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the localized Paramatma, but as the form of the incarnation of the Vedas as well. So I'm going to skip a few sentences and I'm going to read, start the second paragraph of the purport. With Prabhupada, it's interesting because this is interesting purport because Prabhupada says the same thing in the first part of the second part of the purport as he said in the first paragraph. We just heard that, the first half of the first paragraph. Now, in the second paragraph, he says, Anta Plavishta Shashta Jnana. The living entity forgets as soon as he quits his present body, but he begins his work again, initiated by the Supreme Lord. Although he forgets, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended his last life. So not only does the living entity enjoy or suffer in this world according to the dictation of the Supreme Lord, situated locally in the heart, etc. So same point Prabhupada's making twice in the same purport, how Krishna is within the heart and he is supplying knowledge, remembrance, forgetfulness. In other words, living entities have a desire to do something and their life ends. And what happens is, how it works is that according to your karma, you'll get another body. And you'll get in that body, you will be given the opportunity to continue trying to fulfill the desires that you had in your past lifetime. But once again, according to your karma, it's not like if you're desiring to be a billionaire, that you necessarily in your next life, you're going to be a billionaire. No, what will happen is you'll be given a body where you can, once again, try to become wealthy. And according to your karma, you'll be able to achieve a certain amount of success in that endeavor. But it's all orchestrated by the super soul. See? He's providing as Prabhupada said twice, when you get the next body, you forget everything about the past life. So you don't, what happens is Krishna super soul doesn't remind us of necessarily of the past life per se, although there are cases of that. But he just reawakens those same desires, those same ambitions are there, and you're just pursuing them, not remembering that we're doing that in the past lifetime, but you're in a new body, in a new situation. You're just continuing on. And according to and Krishna will supplies that and reminds you of, hey, in your past life, you wanted to do this. Here's your opportunity to try again. And according to your karma, he gives you the intelligence to do it. And according to your karma, you'll achieve a certain amount of success. So that's but that's not the only function. That's not the only thing as Krishna, as the super soul, does. He is supplying that type of knowledge. And it's, in many cases, it's quite significant. I mean, if we look at human society, we can see that, human beings can have accomplished, have achieved a lot, accomplished a lot of things. I mean, I'm sitting here in a room and surrounded by so many things, a computer in front of me, a cell phone beside me. Wherever I look, I'm just looking at things that I wouldn't have a clue how to make these things. People have a lot of intelligence. It's all coming from Krishna. Whatever intelligence we see that people has, it's coming from Krishna. Actually, back in the 7th chapter, Krishna says that. I think there's a verse, Buddhi or Buddhi Matana Asmi, that I am the intelligence of the intelligent. Yeah. Buddhi Matam Asmi. I am the intelligence of the intelligence. So it's all the great achievements and accomplishments of human beings and human society. Ultimately, they have Krishna to thank for them, because Krishna's giving people the intelligence how to do these things. All the remarkable intelligence. Now, in the case of the devotees, people who are inclined to understand about, just go beyond just being happy and successful in this material world. He is a special type of intelligence. He awards a special type of intelligence. He gives to people who are desiring to revive their awareness of their original nature, which is completely spiritual, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss, and understand more about their relationship with God, with Krishna. He gives them the intelligence so they can make progress along those lines. And that's described in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, Tesham satadiyuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayantite. And in that verse, he's referring to the devotees. He says, to those who are constantly devoted, people who are actually striving for spiritual elevation, and who are constantly devoted in doing that, to those who are constantly devoted and who worship me with love, I give them the intelligence, not by which they can build a skyscraper building or construct a 747 jet or build a bridge or whatever. No, I give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. Yena mamupi antite. So that's the difference. That to the materialists, people who are desiring to improve their situation in the material world with hopes of becoming happy as a result of doing that, Krishna gives them a particular type of intelligence. Nobody could do anything without receiving intelligence from Krishna. Non-devotees don't realize that, but devotees can understand that. We're dependent upon Krishna to supply us intelligence. So he gives one type of intelligence to people who are desiring to become happy here in the material world, and he gives another type of intelligence to people who are desiring to be happy by going back to Godhead and reawakening their dormant love for him and reviving their spiritual life. So that's what's being mentioned there in the chapter 10, text 10 of the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm going to read a little bit more about intelligence from the Bhagavatam. There's a very nice let's see, verse in the, appears in the second canto, chapter 2, text 35. And let me see if I could. Here is the translation to that verse. I think it's Sukadev Goswami who's speaking here. He says, the personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, is in every living being along with the individual soul. And this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence. Okay, but in the purport, I'm not going to read the entire purport. I'm just going to read a couple sentences here and there. Here's an interesting sentence. It says, actually, the Lord is not perceivable by our present materialized senses, but when one is convinced of the presence of the Lord by a practical service attitude, that's an important point right there. You become convinced of the presence of the Lord by a practical service attitude. So I'm going to jump ahead here in my think points because that's a very important point. Krishna's presence, you become convinced of Krishna's presence as a result of a practical service attitude. Prabhupada says, then there is a revelation by the Lord's mercy, and such a devotee of the Lord can perceive the Lord's presence always and everywhere. So there's that famous verse from the Padma Purana, Atak Shri Krishna Namari Nabhaved Grayam Indriye, Sevan Mukhe Hijivado Swayameva Sparatila, that Krishna can't be understood by the blunt, probably we translated blunt material senses, gross material senses. Can't be understood by our mind, basically, because the mind is one of the senses. Manaksastani Indriyani Prakriti Stani Karshati, that Mame Vamso Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, Manaksastani Indriyani Prakriti Stani Karshati, that Krishna says in the 15th chapter, a little earlier on, is that chapter, text 7, that the living entities are my eternal fragmental parts and parcels. They're struggling hard with the 6 senses, referring to the material senses, which includes the mind. So the mind is one of the material senses. And there's a tendency to try to understand about God and spiritual life by mental speculation. It's thinking, trying to figure it out. But what that verse is telling us is that, and there's so many verses like that verse. There's many verses like that verse. It's a waste of time. It's not going to be successful. You cannot understand Krishna by, cogitation, mental speculation is the phrase Prabhupada was most fond of and like to use. No, but there is a way. So it's not like we're wasting our time. No, there is a way to understand Krishna, and that's Sevan Mukhe Hijivado Swayam Eva Spiratila. Krishna is understood by devotional service. In that verse is specifically mentioning beginning with the tongue. We've mentioned previously, the tongue has those 2 functions, tasting and vibrating. So the idea is that if you engage yourself in devotional service, primarily, at least initially, focusing on chanting and producing transcendental sound vibration, the Hare Krishna mantra, reading Prabhupada's purports like that, or Prabhupada's books in general, and tasting prasadam, then as a result of performing those 2 activities, Svayam Eva Sparatila, Krishna reveals, he reveals. And Prabhupada says here that, in this purport, that as a result of that experiencing that revelation, which is the Lord's mercy, you become convinced of the presence of the Lord, and it's as a result of by a practical service attitude. When I read that just now, the thought, what immediately came to my mind was, be honest with you, book distribution, because I kind of feel like I experience this almost on a regular daily basis when I go out to try to distribute books. It's a manifestation of a practical service attitude. It requires coming out of the comfort zone, mentally, physically, emotionally, pretty much intellectually, in every different which way, in order to do that service, you have to come out of your comfort zone. And so Krishna appreciates that, and he reciprocates. Yeah, for instance, just yesterday, I went to a Walmart in Long Beach, which is about an hour south of Los Angeles. And maybe Mother Cassandra even shopped there, who knows, because she's from California. But yeah, so I was, got out there, and I mean, there's the impediments of your own mind and body, and then then you got to deal with all the people and their minds and bodies. So it's quite a challenge. And initially it was kind of difficult, but I just know from experience, from years of experience, that you just have to persevere. You just have to go out there and just fix your mind. Just tell yourself, don't worry, just take shelter of Prabhupada, take shelter of Krishna here, just do the service. If it's tough, don't worry, just tolerate it, just go, push on. And when Krishna's happy, when Krishna's pleased, he's going to reciprocate and everything's going to work out. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And it's not the first time. It's probably like I lost count. I never kept count, but it just happens time and time again. And if you talk to like a lot of book distributors, you'll hear that same thing, that you go out there, you surrender. It's challenging. It's tapasya. You're dealing with self-consciousness. You're dealing with maybe feeling tired or hungry or cold or hot. You're dealing with rejection. You're dealing with people constantly trying to give you less than the books are worth. You're dealing with maybe worrying about security, all these kind of things, you see? So that's the austerity, but you have to just push on and do it. You're voluntarily accepting all these anxieties and inconveniences to the body and mind for the purpose of pleasing Prabhupada, pleasing Krishna by pleasing Prabhupada by distributing his books. And Krishna, not right away necessarily, or you can never tell how Krishna is going to work, but he definitely reciprocates. And by the end of the day, my experience is that by the end of the day, you've done your books and you've collected a sufficient amount of Lakshmi. And that's exactly what happened yesterday. And it's just happened to me like, I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands of times. Did all the books I brought out, got donations. And when I counted up the Lakshmi, it was, more than enough to cover the printing. And, at the beginning of the day, did it seem like that was going to happen? No, not at all. But I just knew from experience, don't freak out, don't panic, don't press the panic button. Just go ahead and do what you're supposed to do, and Krishna will take care of it. It'll all work out. And sure enough, that's what happened. So, be honest with you, when I go out, there's a lot of good reasons to go out on book distribution. It's the order of preaching in general. It's the order of the spiritual master. It's Prabhupada's instruction. Actually, everybody should learn how to preach and distribute books if they want to please me in the best way. That's an excerpt from a letter Prabhupada wrote. There's so many different quotes, both in letters that Prabhupada wrote and even in his books. And when Prabhupada says something about his particular activity in his books, that really means it's being emphasized. There's one purport in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, I think it's chapter 2, Yach Chvach Charan Lavinda. Prabhupada says that this book distribution, everybody should, I can't remember. The gist of it is that Prabhupada refers to the manual labor of distributing books as, samadhi. He says, this is samadhi. So anyway, so there's the instruction of the spiritual master. There's Lord Chaitanya's instruction, Yare Deke Tarikaha Krishna Upadesh Amada Agyaya Guruhana Tada Edesh, that wherever you go, whoever you meet, tell them about Krishna. That was an instruction of Lord Chaitanya. And somebody might think, oh, that's Lord Chaitanya. He wants to spread the movement. He wants to spread, see Krishna consciousness spread. And that's why he's telling everybody to do that. Yeah, that's true. But he has perhaps another motive as well. He knows that if devotees do that, they're going to advance. See, because preaching requires that you bust out of your, personality. You bust out of your preconceptions. You got to come out of the comfort zone. You got to come out of the box. And Lord Chaitanya, better than anybody else, knows that. And that's why I think, I never heard Prabhupada say this, but I think that's another reason why that Lord Chaitanya gave that instruction, because he knew it would be beneficial for the people who did it, for the people who execute that instruction, for the people who accept that instruction and act upon it. They get great benefit. The greatest beneficiaries of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement are the people who actually go out and participate and preach. The preacher, the book distributor, gets more benefit than all the people who he's, he gets a lot of benefit. The people who he's meeting and giving books to, sure, of course, they're receiving incredible benefit. But the person who's actually out there trying to distribute the books or preach to other devotees and to encourage them, tremendous benefit. So it's all auspicious. All auspicious means that it's a win-win. Everybody benefits. The people who you can't come in contact with, who are receiving books or even meeting devotees or hearing the message, they benefit tremendously. And the person who is out there endeavoring to, give people this opportunity, they also benefit tremendously. So getting right to the point, to be honest with you, my big motivation, perhaps my biggest reason why I go out on book distribution is not to make money and support myself. It's not even because I'm thinking like, well, Prabhupada said to do it, therefore I should do it. It's because I feel like it's an opportunity to meet Krishna. Yeah, it's an opportunity to experience Krishna. That's what, and that's why when I read that sentence phrase there, I kind of picked up on it. Where was it again? Yeah. But when one is convinced of the presence of the Lord by a practical service attitude, that's what happens, you see? When you go out there with a practical service attitude, meaning you go out there and you engage in the service of trying to, and in my case, distributing books. Actually, I'm using that as an example because that's my service. That's what I do. But I mean, the correct understanding would be in any service, if you have that favorable practical service attitude, the result will be Krishna will reciprocate. And as a result of you experiencing that reciprocation, you'll become convinced of the presence of the Lord. See, as a result of that practical service attitude. And it says that there is a revelation by the Lord's mercy, and such a devotee can perceive the Lord's presence always and everywhere. Yeah, it's like Krishna becomes revealed to you. It's not black and white, it's in degrees, but the more you surrender, the more Krishna reveals. Yes, I think it's in the 4th chapter. He says, Yayatamam papajante tam stataiva bhajamiham. As they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. See, so the more we, embrace the philosophy and particularly this process and engage in devotional service, then proportionately, as exactly how Krishna says, as they surrender to me, I reward them accordingly, or proportionately. Krishna reveals himself to us. Okay, reading on here. So it says, he can perceive, this is referring to the devotee, he can perceive that intelligence is the form direction of the Paramatma, plenary portion of the personality of Godhead. So what that means is this, that the devotee can understand that Krishna has given me intelligence. It's another way, this form direction of the Paramatma is a fancy way of talking about inspiration. Sometimes you feel like you get some inspiration. That's the form direction of the Paramatma. That's Krishna. So a devotee can understand that Krishna's inspiring me. Prabhupada he perceived the intelligence, the form direction of the Paramatma. He was inspired. That's what that's talking about there, I believe, in that sense. The presence of Paramatma in everyone's company is not very difficult to realize. And then, okay, that's that. I'm not going to read all this. Probably goes into brilliant analysis of how we can understand the presence of the super soul. Even an ordinary person can, but it's a little bit technical. So I'm going to go ahead here to a latter part of that purport. Prabhupada says, intelligence gives one direction like some higher authority. Well, that's because that's exactly what it is. That intelligence is the direction of a higher authority. And that higher authority is Krishna within the heart. So intelligence gives one direction like some higher authority. And the living being cannot see or move or eat or do anything without the use of intelligence. So we're completely dependent upon Krishna to be able to do anything, even ordinary material activities, what to speak of Krishna devotional service. Now, here's an interesting sentence. Prabhupada says, when one fails to take advantage of intelligence, he becomes a deranged man. That's a big statement right there, you see? So, and that, I think that's like, it really says something about the whole issue of free will, misuse of minute independence. In other words, everybody's getting a fair shake. And some people are failing to take advantage of intelligence. Krishna's giving intelligence, and if a living entity fails to take advantage of that intelligence, then things go south. And to the degree that we fail to take advantage of the intelligence that Krishna is giving us, that will determine how far south they go. And to the point where you could actually be, as Prabhupada says here, you could become deranged, which is, deranged is a quality that's experienced by people who are being overly influenced by the mode of ignorance. It can get that bad. So, and goes on, says, and so a living being is dependent on intelligence or the direction of a superior being. Such intelligence is all pervading. Okay, what is that? Such intelligence is all pervading. Well, I think what that means to me is this, that in the Brahma Samhita, there's a verse, how's it go? I can't remember how it starts, but okay, I can't remember the first two lines, but the second two lines are Andantarashta Panamanu Chayantarashtam. That's the third line, which means that Krishna's within, and Krishna's even within every atom. That's what that's saying. Krishna's within every atom. So super soul is present practically everywhere. And so in that sense, intelligence is all pervading. Krishna's present in every atom. And all intelligence is coming from the super soul, and he's practically everywhere. So in that sense, he's all pervading. Every living being has his intelligence, and this intelligence being the direction, he's clearly stating it here. It's that intelligence is the direction of some higher authority. Is just like a father giving direction to his son. The higher authority who is present and residing within every living being is the super self. So this is, that's a very important point right there, that intelligence is just like a father giving direction to his son. So the father wants to benefit the son as much as possible. It's just a question of the son has to be receptive. I mean, I'll give you an example, okay, how this works. From my personal experience. My father was an electrical engineer. He actually was the manager of electronics company. He was the project director for the radar jammers on the F-16 airplane. Radar jammers are like electric countermeasures. So, it wasn't like famous or anything like that, but that was a pretty good project. It was a pretty significant project. I mean, I meet people today, they when I say that, they're very impressed. I say sometimes I throw that out there. The people I meet on Sankirtan, if they have an engineering background. Now, so that was my father, okay? Project director for the radar jammers on the F-16 airplane. Now, here I am. What do I know about electrical engineering? Nothing. I'm embarrassed to say. Well, I'm not embarrassed, but unfortunately, nothing. Why? Because I wasn't receptive. You see? I had the opportunity. If I was interested, if I was receptive, if I was willing, if I was, more submissive and etc., I could have learned so much. My father would have spent unlimited time, sitting there explaining things to me and teaching things and buying things for me to do little projects with and stuff like that. But because I wasn't, my interest and attention was elsewhere, mostly just playing sports with my friends and stuff like that. So I didn't benefit. I mean, I still benefited. He was a wonderful person and he helped me in so many other different ways, but I wasn't able to take full advantage, anyways near full advantage of what I could have learned from my father if I had been just more intelligent or, more receptive, more, what's the word? Submissive, compliant, like that, humble. So anyway, so this is an analogy. I'm giving you an analogy that Krishna is the Father, and what we could learn, we could be unlimitedly benefited by Krishna's association. I mean, we could learn from Krishna how to become pure devotees on the level of, the gopis or Uddhava or et cetera, Hanuman and, the Pandavas and all these great devotees. Krishna will give us that intelligence. He'll train us up and teach, how to do that if we want, if we're prepared. But but if we're not, then he'll just do the best he can for us. That as was the case with my father. He did the best he could, considering he had a son who was not, kind of way out there. He did the best he could, and I benefited somewhat, but nowhere near as much as I could have if I had my head screwed on right. So in the same way, we should really pray to Krishna. Krishna, please help me. I know that, you're like this analogy says, just like the father giving direction to his son. If you have like a very qualified father, you could benefit incredibly. So we should pray to Krishna. Krishna, please help me to take advantage of your association. Help me to, to do what I need to do so that I can become a pure devotee in this lifetime. Because Krishna is definitely capable, that as the super soul, through inspiration, giving us that intelligence or putting us in contact. That's another way Krishna works. Sometimes he'll enlighten us from within. That's like it says in the Bhagavad Gita, out of compassion. This is the next verse after he talks about how he gives devotees the intelligence to come to him. He says, out of compassion for them, I who am dwelling within their heart, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So Krishna can do that directly without anybody else being in the picture. But generally speaking, what he does is he puts you in contact. He arranges Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hriday Shayarjana Tishtati. Krishna says, I am seated in everyone's heart. The living entity is seated as if on a machine made of the material energy. And he's directing the wandering. See, so Krishna directs you to come in contact with a bona fide spiritual master. But this is generally how Krishna does it. There's a nice verse from, can't remember where, but it goes, Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavanji, Guru Krishna Prasade Bhai, Bhakti Lata Beach. That after wandering throughout the universe, that living entity that's fortunate comes in contact with a bona fide spiritual master by the mercy of Krishna. And then by the mercy of the spiritual master, meaning that he gets instructions from the spiritual master, and if he puts those into practice in his life, then he gets Krishna. See, so that's generally how Krishna likes to operate. He'll direct you, he'll make an arrangement for you to come in contact with a bona fide spiritual master. You'll get the knowledge from him, and then by following that, you get the benefit. So anyway, kind of jumped ahead there. Well, okay, so here's a point. We kind of touched upon this in the previous class, but it's a really important one, so I want to mention it again. Why? Why is Krishna, prepared to do all this? Why is he hanging out there, so to speak, in our heart of all living entities? I mean, that's a lot of living entities, and being prepared to do like that. Well, the simple, and at least to me now, obvious answer is he loves us. He loves the living entities. Where his, as I quoted a few minutes ago, his fragmental eternal parts and parcels. So Krishna, we are is in that, I just read that purpose, like a father to the son. Well, we're like Krishna's spiritual children, the jivas. So Krishna has love for all the jivas, and he wants to take us back home, back to Godhead. That's Krishna's motivation. That's why he is accompanying every single spirit soul as the super soul. That's a lot of spirit souls, and there's a lot of super souls. There's all one super soul, but that's a lot of work. It's a lot to do. But he's doing all that because he loves the living entities, and he's trying to bring everybody back to Godhead, all the souls back to Godhead. Actually, this material world is just meant for that purpose. It's like a reform school. And Krishna's trying to reform all the souls that have left the spiritual world and are now here in the material world through a process. But it's a process that's playing out over many, many millions of lifetimes. And Prabhupada himself says that in the purport to that verse in the 10th chapter, text 11. It says, due to many, many millions of births, and the contact with the material energy, but now the consciousness is covered by the, by materialism. But so anyway, that's Krishna's plan. He's trying to reform us, and it's a definitely a very much a multi-life process. As I said, is playing out, according to Prabhupada's own words, over many, many millions of lives. Sometimes Prabhupada said crores and crores of births, or in another occasion, Prabhupada said, many, many Brahma's lifetimes have come and gone, and still we are conditioned. So we're talking about the souls in this material world for a really long time, due to misuse of free will, not wanting to serve Krishna. But Krishna is as stubborn as we are to not serve Krishna. Krishna's more, I won't say, probably not the right word to use, stubborn. He's more determined. Krishna's more determined than we are stubborn. Well, we could say determined. We're determined not to serve Krishna, but Krishna's more determined to help us see the light and help us understand that, no, look, you're making a mistake. You're not going to be happy like that. As stubborn as you are to not want to serve me, I'm more stubborn, or I'm more determined to help you understand that you're never going to be happy. You're never going to be happy, and pursuing the path you're pursuing now. Your only hope of becoming happy is to, come and surrender and be a good servant like that. Anyway, I read this paragraph once back a couple of weeks ago. I'm just going to read it again because it's really a very important paragraph. This is from in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 8th canto, 3rd chapter, text 17. Prabhupada says, only Krishna can deliver us from this material existence. Indeed, he is always trying to deliver us. That's important right there. He's the only one who can, and he's always working at it. He's always trying to deliver us. It says, he is within our hearts, and he is not at all inattentive. His only aim is to deliver us from material life. So, Krishna doesn't come to the material world to sightsee or to have a good time. It's not like he's there as super soul because he wants to check out Hawaii or something like that. No, he's got one aim, and that's to deliver us. He's the only one who can. He's on the job all the time. According to this, he's always trying to deliver us, and he's not at all inattentive. He's doing the job, and he's doing it with attention, and it's his only reason for being here. It says, it's not that he becomes attentive to us only when we offer prayers to him. Even before we offer our prayers, he incessantly tries to deliver us. So he's working overtime. Even before we're interested in being delivered, Krishna's working on it. He's working on the project. You see, he's trying to deliver us even when we're not interested in being delivered. You can think of your own analogies, but that's pretty far out. Here we are, we're trying to enjoy in the material, not us who are trying to be devotees, but most of the living entities are just trying to enjoy their senses in this way and that way and this and that way. Meantime, Krishna is there as the super soul, and the whole time he's thinking about how he can deliver that living entity. That's what that means to me. It says here, even before we offer our prayers, he incessantly tries to deliver us. That's really amazing quality. If that ain't merciful and compassionate, what is? It says he is never lazy in regard to our deliverance. So not only is he trying to do that, but he's doing it with enthusiasm. He's not lazy about it. It means he's really it's not like it's just like a low priority on the list. He's into it. I mean, he's trying to do it so that in a way that, will be successful. He's never lazy in regard to our deliverance. Even before we try to offer our prayers, he's trying to deliver us, and he's not lazy about it. He's doing it with enthusiasm. It says, so therefore he's called Buri Karunaya, which means unlimitedly merciful and delivering us back home, back to Godhead. It says he's always trying to bring us back home, back to Godhead. And Papa makes this point that although he's constantly trying, we refuse to accept his instructions. He says, nonetheless, he has not become angry. See, that's an interesting point. That's an interesting quality of Krishna. I mean, imagine you're trying to help somebody who who you could see really needs help. And that person you're trying to help them. They're not at all cooperating. They're not at all appreciative of the fact that you're trying to help him or her. Okay. And, you're just kind of like going about your thing and you're not cooperating at all. And you become frustrated, wouldn't you? And at some point you probably feel like, why am I knocking my brains out with this person? Forget it. I'll try to help somebody else, or I got better things to do with my time. But Krishna doesn't get like that. Krishna doesn't get frustrated and angry with us. I think that's what that means here. It says he's constantly trying, but although he's constantly trying and we refuse to accept his instructions, Prabhupada says he does not become angry. He doesn't say he does not. He says he has not become angry, meaning it's holding out the possibility that he may in the future. But at least to date, he has not become angry. He has not become angry. We shouldn't test his patience, though. And then it says here, and then therefore he's called Buri Karunaya, unlimitedly merciful in delivering us from this miserable material condition of life and taking us back home, back to Godhead. So this is a far out paragraph, and this is a far out, great meditation. This is a great meditation. Sometimes you meet Christians on the street, and they might, at least I used to get this on a regular daily basis, now not so much, but they would say to me, Jesus loves you. And I said, actually, that's an important thing. It's they're actually invoking an important thought that it's very encouraging. It's for devotees to have that conviction or that understanding that Krishna loves us. For me, I need to remember that because it keeps me from getting discouraged. Because sometimes you might be in some situation it's difficult for one reason or another, but if I remind myself of this exact paragraph, it's not an accident that I'm able to explain it and kind of touch upon so many different points, because I've kind of probably read this hundreds of times and thought about it on numerous occasions. And it's very helpful. It's a very helpful meditation. It's very encouraging. I'll make one last point, and then I'll maybe we could take some questions or have some discussion. This morning, just as I was in the temple room Prabhupada gave class this morning, and at the end I was sitting there kind of making an outline for this class, and I was sitting in the corner there, and there's one devotee there. His name is Madhav Mahotsava. He's actually the son of a Prabhupada disciple named, two Prabhupada disciples, Prithu Prabhu, and forget his mother's name. Remember his mother's name? Mother Rambaru. So he's their son, and he went to the Gurukul in Vrindavan for a number of years. So he's married now. He's a Grihastha, and he has a son, little boy. He's probably about 5, 6 years old. So, he's very conscientious devotee, and he's been bringing his son to the temple for, I mean, practically since the kid's an infant, basically. You know, he's very good about that. But, you know, be honest with you, like in over the years, the last few years, and watching him do that, I was thinking, I couldn't help but think to myself on a lot of occasions, man, I don't know, this guy might be wasting his time. This kid seems really spaced out, you know? And I would keep remembering the pastime in the Bhagavatam of Jud Bharat, where he was, you know, after he took birth, after Maharaj Bharati took birth as the deer, and after the deer, he came back as Jud Bharat, and his father was a Brahmin, and his father was trying to train him up in so many different ways, you know, to do, you know, but no matter what kind of training his father tried to give him, it just didn't sink in, you know, because that was Jud Bharat. He was doing that on purpose because he didn't want to get entangled in the social life there. But anyway, and everybody thought he was kind of really, you know, dull and, you know, they don't use the word retarded today, but handicapped something. So anyway, sometimes I would think like this about this boy, you know, because he just didn't seem like he was in a world of his own. You know, you couldn't communicate with him when you went up there to try to talk with him. But anyway, this morning something far out happened. You know, I sat down next to him and I could see, wow, you know, this boy's changing. His father was determined. His father persevered. His father just has been bringing him to the program. And as of late, he actually walks around, you know, during the japa period with his father. His father's got him chanting, and he chants. He walks around and he chants, and he does little services for the devotees. You know, he'll bring the mats and stuff, and he's becoming transformed. You know, he's becoming. And you know, I was realizing this morning, wow, this process is powerful, and the mercy of Prabhupada and the mercy of Lord Chaitanya is very powerful, because here's this boy. I mean, at least I could be wrong, but by my material calculation, I was, you know, I was feeling this kid is, forget it. This is, you know, why are you feeling? He's totally influenced by the, you know, the lower modes of nature. He's not going to be able to. But it's just by the mercy of the association of the devotees, and you know, his father and his mother being so determined, and he's coming around. I could see how this kid is going to be a good devotee. You know, whatever modes of nature were kind of like covering him or clouding, he's, by Krishna's mercy, he's doesn't seem to be, he's pulling out of it. He's being transformed. So anyway, it just gave me the realization that, wow, devotional service is really powerful. Coming in the association of the devotees, and you know, just being in contact with the process and participating, you know, taking part, chanting, taking prasadam, serving the devotees, it's really powerful, and it really is transformative in a very positive, beneficial way. And I mean, to me, that he was a living example of that. So it was very encouraging. It made me feel really good that there is hope for us. There's hope for us. There's hope for the Krishna consciousness movement. So I'll stop there. Does anybody have any question? Okay. Yes. Mata.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, Hare Krishna. I loved your lecture. Well, I kind of have a comment. What you were saying about the service attitude and how it really brings about, you know, Krishna revealing himself. I started to think that this service attitude is really innate in us, and it's very much built in us, because Prabhupada had said that we are serving something. We're always serving something. We're either serving our bellies, we're serving our wives, we're serving our boss, we're serving the tax collector. And so the service attitude, I feel, is there. And even if you see it in this material sense, you even go on YouTube and any video is telling you how you can, you know, attain this car if you just, you know, put in, if you study this, or basically it's if you serve, if you just apply some service into this, then you're going to get this. And they act as if it's like this new thing, like, and they make it sound really nice with flashy words and everything, but it's just bottom line, it's really just service. And so I was just thinking about that when you're speaking of just like, we really have it in us. We have it innate in us to serve. And if we could just serve the right thing, which is Krishna, and apply that service in a nice service attitude, then it's perfect. We've perfected our lives. And then I also had this thought, and I wanted you to correct me on it. I'm not sure if it's appropriate thought, but when you were saying how Krishna is, really over endeavoring to help the jivas, and correct to purify them. Would you say that that's service to us that he's giving us? Is that that's devotional service to us that he's kind of, giving to the jiva and helping them and really putting in that time, planning, orchestrating these events and these situations? Can you say that's like devotional service to the jiva, and therefore, when we're reciprocating that, we can't reciprocate that same amount because that's Krishna, and he's obviously just in quality much greater than us. But if we kind of reciprocate through our own capacity that devotional service back to him, would you say that that's the goal there, or is that the proper way to think about that?
Yeah. And I'm gonna try to pull something up, because there's a lecture Prabhupada gave in 1966, where he kind of talked about that. And I'm gonna see if I could find it and read what Prabhupada said. I'll do so. I'll make one attempt. Okay, unsuccessful. So I'll just explain it. Yeah, so in this lecture that Prabhupada gave in 1966, Prabhupada was explaining how Krishna becomes the devotee of his devotee. I never heard him refer to like Krishna's doing devotional service to the devotees of living entities. But I mean, he's obviously, yeah, you're correct. He's serving. Krishna is serving the living entities. It's just like parents, just exactly like the parents. He's a parent. He's the supreme parent, and he's making all these arrangements to try to help the living entities at every different level, So yeah, he's serving like anything, I would think. That's my understanding. What other reason? I mean, that's the main reason why the whole material world exists. It's just actually Krishna serving the rebellious, the wayward, children. Basically, he's making an arrangement to reclaim them, reform them. It's a service he's performing for all the living entities. And a big part of the devotional service is just appreciating that, waking up to that, becoming aware of that at some level, and appreciating it. I'll read something here. This is from the 15th chapter. This is a favorite verse of mine because, first I'll read it and then I'll explain why. Okay, so the verse goes, Yada dichagatam tejo jagadbasaya te kilam yach chandiramasi yach chagno tat tejo vidimamakam. This is Krishna speaking. He says, the splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me. And the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire are also from me. Here's Prabhupada's purport. He says, the unintelligent cannot understand how things are taking place. But one can begin to be established in knowledge by understanding what the Lord explains here. So this is the beginning, okay? One can begin to be established in knowledge, real knowledge, by what the Lord explains here. And here, now Prabhupada is going to elaborate upon that statement. He says, everyone sees the sun, moon, fire, and electricity. One should simply try to understand that the splendor of the sun, the splendor of the moon, and the splendor of electricity or fire are coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No, there's appreciation, just appreciation for the wonderful reform school that Krishna has provided. You see, Prabhupada says, in such a conception of life, the beginning of Krishna consciousness, in other words, that appreciation, that conception of life, that's the beginning of Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada says, lies a great deal of advancement for the conditioned soul in this material world. See, so that's an important point. And then Prabhupada elaborates upon that in the second paragraph. He says, so if we can understand that the light and splendor of the sun, moon, and fire are emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, then one's Krishna consciousness will begin. See, so in other words, appreciating what you said in your comment, that Krishna is serving us. Here's some specific examples. He's providing this incredible place for us to, be reformed. And so anyway, Prabhupada goes on to say, by the moonshine, all the vegetables are nourished. The moonshine is so pleasing that people can easily understand that they are living by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. So in my case, it's not so much the moonshine. I'm not a big moon bhakta, but I am a big sun bhakta. And for me, the sunshine is so pleasing that even I can easily understand that I'm living by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. And then Prabhupada goes on to say, without his mercy, there cannot be sun. Without his mercy, there cannot be moon. I can relate to that because there's such incredible things. I mean, when you see something man-made, if it's something that's really like beautiful and simultaneously it's really functional and it's really vast, could that happen by accident? Let's come up with an example of that. Let's take the Empire State Building, okay? That's what, because I'm from New York. That's off the top of my head. Big, beautiful building. It's enormous. If you stand at the base, you have to really crane your neck there to look and see the top. It's enormous. It's vast. It's beautiful. It's not just they didn't just haphazardly slap it up there. It's really a beautiful building to look at. And when you go inside, there's elevators that are going up and down, or there's offices. I mean, there's all sorts of incredible things going on in that building. Could that have happened by accident? No way. So you take something like the sun. The sun is so beautiful. Even before you see the sun, just the first light in the sky, for me, it's like almost a hypnotic or mystical experience. Just from the moment the first light in the sky is there, the whole time the sun is in the sky, it's really amazing. It's beautiful. It's functional. Everything is growing. Everything's maintained by the sun, and it's enormous. Actually, even according to modern science, the sun is you could fit 1 million Earth planets in the sun. If the sun was a basketball, let's say, you could fit 1 million Earth planets, and it's enormous. How could something like that have happened by some random events? It's like it says here, it's by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that something like that exists. So Prabhupada says, these are some thoughts to provoke Krishna consciousness in the conditioned soul. So it's good to, what you were saying, reflect upon that yeah, Krishna is serving us. He's serving us in the form of, the air we breathe, the food we eat, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we should be grateful. We should cultivate an attitude of gratitude. An attitude of gratitude. That's actually, that's not original. I heard Vaisheshika say that. An attitude of gratitude. That's the beginning of devotional service. And as Prabhupada says here, in such a conception of life lies a great deal of advancement for the conditioned soul in this material world. So that's a very good point. Anybody else have any question or comment? Well, I had one other point here. I didn't kind of, because I kind of didn't do my notes in order, but I just wanted to, remember at one point in the class, I was saying how the Christians sometimes say to you, Jesus loves you. And I said that was a good point. There's a lot of good things about Christianity. I mean, you know, as devotees, sometimes we tend to, at least maybe not so much these days, but like back, certainly in the early days, really kind of put down, you know, Christianity. I mean, obviously we're Hare Krishna devotees because we believe, and I do believe that this is superior philosophy, superior lifestyle. But I just because it's such an enormous influence on people's lives and mentality. I mean, I'm not even from a Christian background, but it had, you know, just being growing up in this country, it was like I felt like an enormous kind of weight of almost like a social pressure to accept Christian ideas and values and conclusions in my life, because it's because there's so many people who are Christians and they believe in it very strongly. So this is what I'd like to say something about that. And I like to say that I think it's good, and that there's definitely people out there who are Christians who they sincerely believe in God. They're praying to God, and they're trying to be good people, and they're trying to do it in relation to, you know, what they've learned, you know, about Christianity. And so I think that's very good. You know, I genuinely mean that. I think that, you know, anybody who's who believes in God and is trying to pray to him and get closer to him in some way, I think that's, you know, I have great respect for that. I think that's a wonderful thing. I mean, sometimes when I get up in the morning, I'll get up and I kind of, you know, do what I have to do to take care of my body a little bit. And I'll just sit down and I start chanting before I, you know, kind of start doing other things. And I just think to myself, okay, you know how you can zoom out and zoom in on your computer? Sometimes I do this exercise, like a mental exercise, where I zoom out on my own life. And I say, okay, I sort of go, well, what's going on here? And I think to myself, well, what's going on is here, I'm a human being. I'm after a night's sleep, I'm awake and I'm sitting here praying to God. Sure, I'm doing it in a very culturally specific way. I'm doing it as a Hare Krishna, but, you know, be honest with you, I mean, there's like, what, 6-7 billion people in the earth. There's probably, you know, I think there's like 3-4 billion people who, at least if you ask them, they said they believe in God. So there's a lot of people out there that aren't Hare Krishnas, but who believe in God, and, you know, who are doing just like what I'm doing, but in a different way. They're getting up early in the morning and they're praying to God. They're not doing it by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, but they're doing it in another way. I mean, my grandfather was an Orthodox Jew. He did that within the Jewish tradition, in a very serious way. I mean, it wasn't like, you know, it was, I mean, serious stuff. And so I have great respect for that and admiration for people who do that, you know, people who have made that choice, that they believe in God, and within what they've been introduced to, what they learned, what they believe, they're trying to. And I think there's a lot of people in Christianity that are in that category. Okay, so, but why I'm not a Christian is I just don't think that they got it right. You know, with all due respect, and I really mean that with all due respect. This idea of that when you're born, that's the beginning. Christians don't have the idea that, you know, you live before your birth in this lifetime. Your birth in this lifetime is the beginning, and you have one lifetime. And within that one lifetime, if you accept Jesus as your savior, then you're going to heaven forever. And if you don't, then you go to hell forever. That's, I mean, for the most part, that's kind of how Christians think. And for one thing is, I don't think that doesn't impress me. Is it like, why would God do that? You know, just give you one shot at it. And if you get it wrong, such a heavy punishment doesn't seem like a very fair or reasonable thing for God to do. And on top of that, there is empiric evidence that about reincarnation. There's children remember their past lives. So the combination of those two things, I just feel like, nah, can't go with that. I don't think they have it right as far as the philosophy goes. And also they're not, somehow or another, they've kind of, well, what about animals? You know, it's only, it seems like it's only a good religion for human beings, and even not such a good one at that. But what about animals? What about being kind to animals? It doesn't seem to enter into their, the whole Christian worldview. So that's another reason why I kind of like Krishna consciousness better, because it's a philosophy that includes taking not just human beings, but the rest of the living creatures on the face of the earth as well. So anyway, I just wanted to mention a couple of points like that, because as I said, it's such a powerful, not more than social, it's a powerful psychological force. And as I said, with one part of me, I have great respect for the people I meet who are, choosing to believe in God and doing it within the context of that tradition. But I have to say that at the same time, I'm not intimidated by that anymore. I maybe was like years ago as a new devotee, but no longer. And I think they got it wrong. I think we got it right. It just makes, Krishna consciousness makes a lot more sense to me. So anyway, anybody else have anything they'd like to? Okay.
I would like to add something, Prabhuji. Thank you. Please accept my humble condolences, and
Sure.
thank you so much for having this class today. So I do 100% agree with what you say about Christianity and how it's very black and white thinking, because I was raised as a Roman Catholic, and even then, my other side of the family, they were Protestant. And I specifically remember at my baby sister's baptism, my aunt refused to get out of the car and go inside and be a part of the baptism, because she believed, because that my Catholic family wasn't Protestant, that we were automatically going to hell. So it makes no sense to me. And plus the fact that the church my aunt and uncle went to, they actually took myself and my older cousin one time specifically. And it was a Pastor John Hagee. Do you remember ever hearing about him? Yeah, he has a brother who was charged with sexually assaulting a 13-year-old girl, but he bailed him out. And that's another common thing within the Catholic Church, is definitely molestation of children. And so while we were at church, first of all, it wasn't a church. It was like the Alamo Dome. It was gigantic. There were rows upon rows of pews, and you could only see the pastor on like those big screens, and they had 3 of them. And he just spoke so much hatred and evil, and where he said, yeah, basically, if you don't believe in Jesus, you will go to hell. And I was just really confused, because it's like, well, what about the Hindu children? What about the Buddhist children? What about the Jewish children? Do they automatically go to hell just because they were raised in a different household? And I asked my aunt this, which honestly was a bad idea, and she said yes, they would go to hell. So it's very hypocritical of Christians to say that they have an all-loving God when it comes with terms and conditions. And so that's why I think just Hinduism is a lot more sensible. You don't just have one chance and you have to get it right, or eternal damnation. It's like you can try again, and like you said, Krishna, he's there for us before we even want to surrender unto him. And so it's like that just feels more securing and honestly loving, like honest loving. And so I did, like, it's more honest, and he's real, and he's more relatable than to Jesus, who was supposed to be the super supreme being, all perfect and everything, because people think that Jesus has been perfect since he was born. But I'm like, but wasn't he half human? Wasn't he supposed to make mistakes? But if you ask questions in the church, you automatically become evil to them. I did get kicked out of Vacation Bible School because I asked a question. Specifically, it was, about the creation of earth, and I asked the teacher, wait, if the sun was created on the fourth day, how did God know time was passing? How did he know a day and night cycle? And she literally just kicked me out of the room. She didn't even respond. She just said, don't think like that. You're going to go outside and sit in timeout. And I was just so confused. And so I think that's another issue, is because you're not allowed to question.
Yeah, right. Not
Yeah,
allowed to
and-
think.
yeah, and it's crazy. So that's why this being a Hare Krishna and a Hindu in general just seems a lot more
Yeah.
sensible. So thank you for bringing up your valid points.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. I'm out of time, but in the next meeting, I'll try to say something about how it is that obviously less than first-class religions have become so popular throughout the world. And yeah, but as I said, that'll be for next time. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody. Hare Krishna. Have a beautiful rest of your day. And
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
sorry.
Krishna.
Okay, Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.